d'État africains, camarades chefs de délégation, bonjour. C'est un honneur pour moi ce matin donc de prendre la parole ici et de vous passer donc le salut fraternel du peuple du pays des hommes intègres. C'est aussi le lieu pour moi, avant tout propos, de rendre grâce à Dieu, Dieu Tout-Puissant qui nous a permis de nous réunir ici ce matin en bonne santé pour parler de l'avenir et du bien-être donc de nos peuples. Je m'en vais m'excuser auprès des anciens que je pourrais vexer dans mes propos à venir. Africanité oblige, les droits d'aînesse, je me dois de m'excuser.
What if I told you that one of the poorest countries in Africa, landlocked, overlooked, and long written off by the global elite, is now building a railway so bold, so strategically important? That drones are flying overhead, bridges are mysteriously collapsing, and the world's most powerful nations are quietly panicking. This isn't just about steel tracks, it's about a revolution in motion. Led by a young soldier-turned-president, who's rewriting the rules of African sovereignty. This is the story they don't want you to hear, and once you start watching, you'll understand why. Since stepping into the role of interim president, Ibrahim Traoré, Africa's youngest leader, has been a force of transformation in Burkina Faso. True to his word, he has set the nation on a new trajectory, championing initiatives that aim to uplift communities and secure a brighter future for all. Not only has he launched a wave of new development projects, but he has also shown commitment to reviving and advancing programs that were initiated before his leadership. In just a few months, Traoré has become a headline figure not for political theatrics, but for his bold voice, unwavering dedication, and deep-rooted loyalty to his military roots. Whether it's his ever-present military uniform or the firm, respectful way he greets his comrades, Ibrahim Traoré stands apart. Though he's not exactly a favorite in Western diplomatic circles, especially in France, he's earned deep respect at home. In Burkina Faso, he's not just a leader, he's a symbol of pride, purpose, and possibility. Now, imagine this. One of Africa's poorest, landlocked countries, long overlooked by global powers and dismissed by investors, is on the brink of reshaping the entire trade dynamic of West Africa. This isn't a utopian dream, it's unfolding, right now. In the Sahel, the dry desert winds sweeping across Burkina Faso aren't just stirring dust anymore, they're stirring ambition. New railway tracks carve their way across the parched earth, like lifelines reconnecting a continent that once moved to someone else's rhythm. And soon, the locomotives that travel them won't just carry freight or passengers, they'll carry a bold new vision of African sovereignty. At the center of it all is a man in camouflage, not in a custom-tailored suit. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, once a soldier, now a visionary head of state, has greenlit a project of historic proportions, a Pan-African railway corridor, dubbed the West African Sovereign Rail Initiative, WASERI. It's a 2,000-kilometer route starting in the heart of Burkina Faso and stretching outward to Mali, Niger, and the southern ports of Ghana, with future links planned to Togo and Côte d'Ivoire. This is more than infrastructure, it's a declaration. For too long, African trade routes mimicked colonial blueprints, funneling raw resources outward, away from the continent's interior, dictated by the logic of foreign ports and powers. Landlocked nations like Burkina Faso have paid the price: economic dependency, long export delays, and a system designed to benefit others. But under Traoré, that narrative is changing. Picture Ouagadougou not as a forgotten waypoint, but as a vital new hub of continental movement. The WASERI project isn't just stitching together countries, it's stitching together futures. It's a realignment of territory and trade, but also of mindset and agency. The political stakes are just as bold. After cutting military and diplomatic ties with France, Burkina Faso joined Mali and Niger to form the Alliance of Sahel States (EAS), a move that rattled the old order and drew heavy sanctions, suspensions, and media scorn. Yet while the headlines shouted, these nations quietly got to work. And this railway, it's the most tangible sign yet that AES isn't just a temporary political coalition. It's a blueprint for a sovereign West Africa that answers to itself, not outsiders. To understand how revolutionary this is, we have to look back. Colonial rail networks in West Africa were never meant to connect Africans to one another, they were built to extract, to divide, to serve foreign interests. The tracks led out, not across. But Traoré and his allies are turning that logic inside out. Construction has already begun in Fada Ngorma, near the Niger border. On the ground, you'll find a mix of Burkina workers, Chinese engineers, and Russian advisors laying the groundwork for something rare in post-independence Africa, a large-scale infrastructure project conceived and driven by African leadership. And here's the twist: it's not financed by the World Bank, IMF, or Western aid packages. This time, the funding comes from within, from sovereign mining revenues and barter agreements with new international partners. Gold traded for steel, lithium exchanged for locomotives. The exact terms remain under wraps, but insiders hint at significant deals involving Russia, China, and others eager to support a non-colonial model of development. Something is shifting in West Africa, and the tracks are already being laid. While some Western analysts call the vision reckless, for the Alliance of Sahel States AES, this isn't a gamble, it's survival. For Burkina Faso and its partners, the West African Sovereign Rail Initiative, WASRI, represents a bold escape route from a system that has drained their economies for decades. The stakes? Enormous. Burkina Faso alone loses more than $1.2 billion every year to inadequate transport systems, clogged borders, and exploitative port fees. A unified rail network could slash those losses in half. It could open up markets for local farmers, speed up regional trade, and stitch together once isolated economies with steel threads of sovereignty. But such ambition doesn't go unnoticed. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, especially its more France-aligned members, has responded with quiet panic. Beneath the surface of diplomatic smiles lie closed-door meetings, whispered counter-strategies, and desperate plans for competing infrastructure projects. There are rumors of pressure being applied on international lenders to deny AES access to rail technology or machinery. The game board of West Africa is being reset, and not everyone is comfortable with the new rules. Meanwhile, on the ground in Burkina Faso, history is being made. Children who have only seen trains in textbooks now gather near construction sites to watch engines roar to life. Elders speak in hushed tones of the Thomas Sankara-era time when dreaming of an independent Burkina Faso wasn't considered naive, but necessary. This time, though, it isn't just vision, it's action, welding, drilling, and steel. Just across the border, in southern Mali, as the morning sun spills over Lakoro, the hum of machines marks the beginning of WASRI's second phase. This isn't your typical infrastructure rollout. It's the foundation of a new geopolitical identity. To some, it may look like just rail lines and gravel. But to Mali's leadership, and increasingly to others in the region, it's a bold statement of independence that no colonial blueprint can reverse. So why is the world watching so closely? Because railways don't just move goods, they redirect power. They decide where cities thrive, how economies grow, even how militaries mobilize. In a region once controlled lane by French policy, the sight of African leaders charting their own course without foreign consultancies, quietly revolutionary. And revolutions, as history shows, rarely unfold without resistance. As the Waziri tracks push deeper into Mali and plans solidify for the extension to Niger's uranium-rich Arlit region, panic is setting in behind the scenes. What started as diplomatic disapproval of the AES has become a strategic alarm bell. Leaked communications revealed that Nigeria, Côte d'Ivoire, and Senegal have expressed serious concern, not over chaos, but over competition. For decades, coastal nations held the keys to regional trade. They built lucrative economies around controlling access, ports, warehouses, trucking routes. But with this railway, landlocked nations like Burkina Faso and Mali are poised to leapfrog that dependence, establishing internal trade corridors and economic hubs on their own terms. Nigeria, once ECOWAS's uncontested anchor, now watches as an alternative regional union not only forms but flourishes outside its sphere of influence. And that's not all. Whispers of a future energy pipeline connecting AES to Algeria threaten to forge a Sahel to Mediterranean corridor, one that could bypass AISAS infrastructure entirely. Such a pipeline would permanently shift the region's economic center of gravity northward, loosening the historical chokehold coastal states have had on their inland neighbors. Behind the scenes, Waziri's financing breaks all the usual rules. No IMF loans. No Western conditionalities. This is a self-funded endeavor, fueled by resource swaps, sovereign wealth funds, and discrete partnerships with nations willing to do business on new terms. Gold is being far from the headlines, away from polished press releases and mainstream broadcasts. Something remarkable is unfolding on the red earth of West Africa, a quiet but potent alliance. Russia designing logistics, China supplying high-tensile steel, and Burkina Faso funding it all through lithium deals in its Tamba region is reshaping the continent's trade future. This isn't rumor. A leaked Nigerian Ministry of Commerce memo confirms it. To some, these partnerships are lifelines. To others, particularly France, they are provocations.
Camarades, j'ai quelques questions donc de ma génération, mille et une questions qu'on se pose. Mais nous n'avons pas de réponse. Et il se trouve qu'ici, nous pouvons laver donc notre linge sale parce qu'on se sent en famille. On se sent en famille en ce sens que la Russie est une famille aussi pour l'Afrique. C'est une famille parce que nous avons la même histoire. La Russie a consenti d'énormes sacrifices pour libérer le monde du nazisme pendant la Seconde Guerre mondiale. Les peuples africains, nos grands-pères, ont été déportés de force aussi pour aider l'Europe à se débarrasser du nazisme. Nous partageons la même histoire en ce sens que nous sommes les peuples oubliés du monde.
For the former colonial powers, the Sahel has long been a backyard, a zone of influence. Now, with Russian engineers on site and Chinese locomotives rolling off assembly lines, the West sees not just an infrastructure project, but a geopolitical shift it can't control. French media outlets have called it outsourcing sovereignty. But in Ouagadougou, the mood is different, resolute, almost indifferent. Burkina voices say it plainly: we're no longer asking permission. Then there's Algeria, observant, but pivotal. Though not a member of ECOWAS or the AES, Algeria has opened diplomatic channels with Mali and Niger. The aim? Link the new rail corridor to its southern border and from there to the Trans-Saharan Highway and Mediterranean ports. If successful, Sahelian nations long trapped behind Atlantic bottlenecks would gain a second gateway to the sea. Africa's trade spine, once colonial and coastal, is growing a new vertebra. Yet, behind the geopolitics lies the heart of this revolution, the human stories humming along the tracks. In Kaya, Burkina Faso, farmers who once waited helplessly for fertilizer shipments now greet weekly cargo trains. Tomatoes that once rotted in heat now reach city markets fresh. In Gao Malia City, more often seen in conflict headlines than business reports, young engineers, women in logistics, and barefoot boys are writing a new chapter with their hands and sweat. A 19-year-old named Yuba, who had never seen a train before, now trains as a locomotive mechanic. It's like the country woke up, he says. Before we waited, now we build. Just outside Nima, a 22-year-old woman named Isatu leads a crew of all-female technicians managing the railways. Electrical systems. What's most radical isn't just the steel or the speed, it's the transformation in how people see themselves. For decades, West Africans were told their fate was to export raw goods and import debt. Now, they're laying the tracks toward a different destiny, one built on competence, sovereignty, and pride. But not everyone welcomes this awakening. In the shadows, darker forces stir. Near Marcoy, on the border between Burkina Faso and Niger, construction halted for 72 hours, not due to weather or logistics. But a hovering drone, unidentified, unclaimed, sophisticated, military patrols tracked its signal. No known African base matched the frequency. Whispers began. Who's watching, and why? This wasn't an isolated event. Earlier in May, the railway's signaling system, Chinese-made, was hit by a mysterious software failure. A week later, 2 bridges under construction in Niger collapsed. Within days, officially, structural failure was blamed. But internal memos point to signs of tampering. The reality is sobering. A shadow war is unfolding alongside the steel. Why? Because Waziri isn't just a railway, it's a direct threat to an old system. It bypasses toll-dependent ports, weakens French-aligned logistics monopolies, and offers African nations a transport model rooted in self-determination. That's enough to make powerful enemies. Leaked documents from global shipping firms based near the Gulf of Guinea reveal lobbying campaigns to block the rail expansion. Some executives warn that a robust intra-African rail network could render several West African ports economically obsolete within a decade. Security reports from Mali speak of foreign operatives, non-African, using encrypted radios seen near tunnel construction zones. Their purpose? Unknown. But their presence is no coincidence. This battle is more than economic. It's territorial, it's political, it's existential. Even within Mali and Burkina Faso, elites trained in Paris and loyal to external interests view the railway as a betrayal of their old alliances. This is more than a train, one former minister said privately. It's a message. We no longer need permission to move forward. And yet, outside African media, the silence is deafening. A multi-billion-dollar rail project crisscrossing the Sahel, reshaping trade routes and defying traditional power centers, garners barely a mention in Western news. Why? According to media watchdogs, some Western outlets have received quiet editorial pressure to portray the AES as erratic, militarized, and unstable, distracting from its infrastructural feats. Meanwhile, platforms like Al Jazeera, Anadolu, and RT Africa provide consistent, detailed updates, evidence of an emerging East versus West media divide. But Africa isn't waiting for coverage anymore. In a bold countermove, Burkina Faso's Ministry of Information launched Rails of Truth, a grassroots media initiative broadcasting drone footage, worker interviews, and rail maps across WhatsApp, Telegram, and TikTok. "Let them ignore us," a spokesperson said. "We'll tell our own story." Then came the moment that couldn't be ignored. 2 weeks ago, near the Burkina Faso border, engineers discovered something horrifying: an explosive device buried under a section of rail not yet installed. It wasn't homemade. It was military-grade, remote-triggered. It was diffused before it could detonate. No one claimed responsibility. But intelligence officials say the message was unmistakable. This railway, this vision will be opposed, at any cost. And yet, the work continues. Every hammer strike, every welded joint, every grain of gravel is a refusal to be silenced. The rails are being laid not just across a region, but across history. Africa is not just moving. Africa is building. And this time, it's building for itself. The morning after the attempted sabotage. Construction resume, no fanfare, just sparks, flying and rails being laid. Because for Burkina Faso's Traoré, Mali's Goita, and Niger's Tiani, this railway isn't just infrastructure, it's a declaration. Build it, and Africa reclaims the right to connect, trade, and grow on its own terms. Stop it, and the continent risks slipping back into fragmentation and dependence. Yet in towns like Zaber, women form food co-ops to support the workers. In Tillaberi, children study rail schematics in class, seeing in them a future no longer imported. Each bolt, each beam, is a quiet act of defiance. "We know they're watching," one Malian foreman says. "But every meter we lay is a victory, not just for us, but for the Africa our children will inherit." The trains haven't run yet, but the future already has.